You know you're capable of more. You feel it in your chest when you watch someone else step into the opportunity you were too afraid to take. You feel it in the quiet moments before sleep, when the day replays and you see all the places you held back, all the words you didn't say, all the risks you didn't take. You feel it when you scroll through social media and see people living the life you once imagined for yourself, and something inside you whispers, "That could have been me." But something stops you. Not laziness, not lack of intelligence, not even lack of opportunity. It's something invisible, something that lives in the space between your thoughts and your actions. Something that sounds like your own voice, but speaks against your own interests. Something that feels like protection, but operates like a prison. You overthink until the moment passes. You second-guess until the door closes. You analyze until paralysis becomes your default state. And the worst part isn't the missed opportunities. The worst part is knowing that you're doing this to yourself. You watch others move through the world with a confidence that seems almost reckless. They make decisions quickly. They speak up in meetings. They start businesses, end relationships, relocate to new cities, bet on themselves with a certainty you can't comprehend. And you wonder what they have that you don't. What gene or gift or fearlessness allows them to act while you remain frozen. But here's what you need to understand right now, before we go any further. They're not different from you. They're not smarter or braver or more talented. They simply operate their minds differently. And that difference, that one fundamental shift in how they relate to their own thoughts, changes everything. The invisible prison you're living in wasn't built by circumstance. It wasn't built by your past or your parents or your limitations. It was built by your brain, doing exactly what it was designed to do. Trying to keep you safe. Trying to protect you from judgment, from failure, from the unknown. And in doing so, it's keeping you small. Your mind has become a maze of safety mechanisms. Each hallway leads to another question. Each question breeds another doubt. Each doubt generates another reason to wait, to prepare more, to think it through one more time. And meanwhile, your life is passing. The dreams you had at 20 are still dreams at 30. The person you wanted to become feels further away now than it did back then. You've read the books, you've listened to the podcasts, you've consumed endless content about mindset and motivation and manifestation, and maybe some of it helped for a while. Maybe you felt inspired for a few days, took some action, started to believe things could be different. But then the old patterns crept back in. The old voice returned. The old paralysis settled over you like fog, and you found yourself right back where you started. Because knowing isn't enough. Understanding the problem intellectually doesn't solve it. You can't think your way out of a pattern that lives deeper than thought. You can't analyze your way to confidence. You can't overthink your way to action. You need something else. Something more fundamental. Something that changes not just what you know, but how you operate. And that's exactly what this is. This isn't another motivational speech that pumps you up and leaves you unchanged. This isn't a list of tips and tricks that sound good, but don't stick. This is a rewiring, a complete reconstruction of your relationship with your own mind, a transformation so deep that by the end of this journey, you won't recognize the person you were when you started. Because here's the truth that changes everything. Your brain is not fixed. The neural pathways that currently run your life, the automatic thoughts that currently control your actions, the emotional patterns that currently dictate your decisions. None of them are permanent. All of them can be changed. all of them can be rewired. Neuroplasticity, it's not just a concept, it's the most powerful tool you have access to. It means your brain is constantly reshaping itself based on what you practice, what you focus on, what you repeat. Every thought you think strengthens certain neural connections and weakens others. Every action you take carves new pathways and lets old ones fade. Your brain is building itself right now, in this moment, based on what you're doing with your attention, which means you're not stuck. You're not limited by your past or your personality or your current habits. You're simply operating on outdated programming, running software that was installed years ago, designed for a version of you that no longer exists, optimized for threats that are no longer real. And you can change the code. Unstoppable isn't something you're born with. It's not a gift given to the lucky few. It's not a personality trait reserved for the naturally confident. It's a skill, a practiced, learnable, achievable skill that anyone can develop with the right tools and the right understanding. And you're about to learn exactly how to build it. By the time we're done, you won't just understand your mind differently. You'll operate it differently. You'll catch destructive thoughts before they spiral. You'll interrupt old patterns before they take hold. You'll choose empowering narratives instead of defaulting to limiting ones. You'll move through challenges with a calm, centered presence that other people notice. You'll make decisions from clarity instead of fear. You'll speak your truth without rehearsing it first. You'll take action before you feel ready, because you'll finally understand that readiness is something you build through doing, not something you wait to feel. This transformation won't happen overnight. Real change never does. But it will happen, thought by thought, choice by choice. Day by day, you'll start to notice moments where you respond differently. Situations that used to trigger anxiety will start to feel manageable. Conversations that used to exhaust you will start to energize you. Challenges that used to paralyze you will start to excite you. And one day, you'll look back and realize you've become someone new. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because you gave your brain new instructions and let neuroplasticity do its work. You practiced different thoughts until they became automatic. You chose different actions until they became natural. You built different neural pathways until they became your default. You'll move through the world with a quiet, unshakable confidence. Not arrogance, not bravado. Just a deep inner knowing that you can handle what comes, that you trust yourself, that you're capable of figuring things out. That fear and doubt and uncertainty are just weather patterns passing through, not truths about who you are. Your relationships will change because you'll stop performing and start being present. Your work will change because you'll stop second-guessing and start trusting your instincts. Your creative life will change because you'll stop waiting for permission and start claiming your voice. Your entire existence will shift from survival mode to creation mode. And people will notice. They'll ask what's different about you. They'll sense something has changed but won't be able to name it. Because what's changed isn't your clothes or your job or your circumstances. What's changed is fundamental. What's changed is the way you inhabit your own life. You'll no longer be trapped inside your own potential. You'll no longer watch from the sidelines while others play the game. You'll no longer know what you're capable of, but fail to access it. You'll be in the arena, in the conversation, in the risk, in the unknown, and you'll be okay there. More than okay. You'll be alive there in a way you've never been before. This is the promise. This is what's waiting on the other side of this work. Not perfection, not the elimination of all fear or doubt or struggle, but a completely different relationship with those experiences. A relationship where they inform you but don't control you, where they speak but don't decide, where they visit but don't stay. You're about to learn how your brain actually works, how thoughts form and strengthen and take control, how emotions hijack your nervous system and cloud your judgment, how old stories keep playing on repeat because no one ever taught you how to change the channel. And then you're about to learn what to do about it. Specific, practical, proven techniques that give you back control. Tools you can use immediately, in real situations, when your mind starts spiraling, or your body starts panicking, or your old patterns start pulling you backward. You're going to build new neural pathways, install new default settings, practice new ways of thinking until they become automatic. And gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, you're going to become unstoppable. Not in some distant future. Not once you have more time or more money or more experience. Now, starting here. Starting with the very next thought you choose to think and the very next action you choose to take. The invisible prison you built can be dismantled. The barriers that feel permanent are actually temporary. The limitations you've accepted as truth are actually just well-practiced lies. And you're about to prove that to yourself. So let's begin. Let's walk through exactly how you got here, why your mind works the way it does, and what you're going to do to change it. Let's turn understanding into action, and action into transformation, and transformation into a completely new way of being. You're ready. You've always been ready. You just needed the right tools and the right map and the right understanding of what's actually possible. And now you have them. So let's rewire your mind. Let's make you unstoppable. Let's show you who you actually are when fear stops making your decisions. You wake up and the war has already started. Before your eyes fully open, before your feet touch the floor, before the day has even given you a reason to worry, your mind is already 3 steps ahead, running through everything that could go wrong, everything you need to handle, everything you're probably going to mess up. The alarm goes off, and with it comes the familiar weight. Not physical tiredness, though you feel that too. Something heavier. The exhaustion of knowing you have to spend another day managing your own thoughts, negotiating with your own mind, trying to convince yourself to do things you know you need to do, but somehow can't make yourself start. You lie there for a moment, and the mental inventory begins. The emails you didn't send yesterday because you rewrote them 7 times and still couldn't get the tone right. The conversation you replayed for 2 hours last night, analyzing every word you said, every expression on their face, every possible thing they might have meant. The project you've been putting off for weeks because you need to research it more, plan it better, wait until you really understand it before you begin. And underneath all of it, the question you can't quite silence. What if I'm just not capable of this? You get up anyway, because you have to. You move through your morning routine on autopilot, while your mind spins stories about the day ahead. The meeting where you'll probably say something stupid. The presentation where everyone will see through you. The conversation where they'll finally realize you don't belong here. You tell yourself to stop. You know this thinking isn't helpful. You know you're catastrophizing, overthinking, borrowing trouble from a future that hasn't happened. But knowing doesn't stop it. The thoughts keep coming like waves, and you're tired of swimming. By the time you arrive at work, you've already lived through 6 different disasters that haven't occurred. Your body is tense, Your jaw is tight. Your shoulders carry the weight of problems that don't exist yet. And the day hasn't even started. This is what it feels like to live at war with your own mind. Not occasionally. Not just in moments of real stress. Every single day. Every single hour. A constant, exhausting background noise of doubt and worry and second-guessing that makes everything harder than it needs to be. You sit in meetings and half your attention is on the conversation, while the other half monitors how you're coming across. Are you talking too much? Not enough? Did that comment sound stupid? Did they notice you haven't contributed in a while? Should you say something now or wait? And while you're deliberating, the moment passes, and you say nothing, and the familiar disappointment settles in. Another chance to speak up. Wasted. You have ideas. Good ideas. Ideas that could actually help, could actually move things forward. But between the thought and the speaking comes the analysis. What if it's not as good as you think? What if someone else already thought of it? What if they shoot it down and everyone sees you don't know what you're talking about? So you stay quiet. You play it safe. You let someone else take the risk. And later, when someone presents an idea similar to yours and everyone loves it, you feel that specific kind of pain that comes from knowing you had it first, but couldn't make yourself share it. The regret mixes with relief. At least you didn't embarrass yourself, which mixes with self-loathing for being relieved about your own silence. This is the paralysis of analysis, the endless loop of thinking about thinking about thinking. You want to make the right decision, so you research, you compare options, you make lists of pros and cons, you read reviews, ask for advice, gather more information, and the more you learn, the more complex it becomes and the harder it is to choose. So you don't. You wait. You tell yourself you need just a little more clarity, a little more certainty, a little more time. Meanwhile, the opportunity expires. The deadline passes. Someone else takes action while you're still deciding. And you're left with the crushing knowledge that your need for the perfect choice prevented you from making any choice at all. It's not just work. It's everywhere. It's texting someone back and spending 20 minutes crafting a response that should take 20 seconds. It's going to a party and spending the entire time feeling like an outsider, wondering if anyone actually wants you there, analyzing every interaction for evidence that you should leave. It's lying next to someone you love and feeling completely alone because your mind won't stop telling you they're going to leave eventually. So maybe you should protect yourself now. Maybe you should pull back before it hurts too much. You ruin relationships this way. Not through cruelty or betrayal, but through constant second-guessing. You ask them what they meant by that text. You need reassurance that they're not upset. You apologize for things that don't need apologies. You create problems by looking for problems, and eventually they get tired. Tired of convincing you they care. Tired of managing your anxiety. Tired of feeling like nothing they do is ever enough to quiet the voice in your head that says they're going to leave. And when they do leave, your mind says, "See? I told you. You were right to worry. You should have protected yourself more. But you weren't right. You created the very outcome you feared by treating it as inevitable." This is what your mind does. It tries to protect you from pain by anticipating every possible source of it. But in doing so, it creates a different kind of pain. The pain of never fully relaxing, never fully trusting, never fully being present because you're always bracing for impact. You've abandoned dreams this way too. Not because you failed at them, because you never started. The novel you wanted to write sits unwritten, because who do you think you are to write a book? The business you wanted to start remains an idea, because what if you invest everything and it fails? The career change you've been contemplating for years stays a fantasy, because what if you're not actually good at the thing you think you want to do? So you stay where you are, in the job that drains you, in the city that doesn't fit, in the life that feels like it belongs to someone else. And every day you stay, the voice gets a little stronger, the one that says, this is who you are. This is all you're capable of. Better to stay small than risk finding out you're not as special as you secretly hoped. Your body feels it too. The tension lives in your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. You clench without realizing it. You hold your breath. You carry stress in muscles that never fully relax, and over time it becomes your baseline. You forget what it feels like to inhabit your body without bracing against invisible threats. You get headaches, stomach problems, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, because your nervous system never gets a break. It's always on alert, always scanning for danger, always preparing for threats that live primarily in your imagination. People tell you to relax, to not worry so much, to just be yourself. And you want to scream because if you knew how to do that, you would. If you could just flip a switch and turn off the overthinking, the self-doubt, the constant mental commentary, you would have done it years ago. But it's not a switch. It's a pattern. A deeply ingrained, well-practiced, automatic pattern that runs whether you want it to or not. And the more you fight it, the stronger it seems to get. The more you tell yourself to stop overthinking, the more you think about the fact that you're overthinking, which is just more overthinking. You feel alone in this. You look around and everyone else seems to have it figured out. They seem to move through life with an ease you can't access. They make decisions without agonizing. They speak without rehearsing. They take risks without the 3 a.m. panic attacks. And you wonder what's wrong with you that you can't do the same. But here's what you don't see. They're struggling too. Maybe differently. Maybe with different thoughts and different fears. But everyone has a mind that sometimes works against them. Everyone has patterns they wish they could change. Everyone has moments where they feel trapped inside their own thoughts. You're not broken. You're not uniquely flawed. You're not fundamentally different from everyone else who seems to have it together. You just have a very active, very protective, very well-meaning mind that learned somewhere along the way that the best way to keep you safe is to keep you scared, to anticipate every problem, to prepare for every disaster, to never let your guard down. And it's exhausting, living this way, carrying this weight, fighting this war. Every decision becomes a battle. Every interaction becomes a performance. Every quiet moment becomes an opportunity for your mind to remind you of everything you should be worried about. Your career stalls because you won't take the risks that lead to growth. You don't apply for the promotion because you're not quite ready. You don't pitch the big idea because it's not quite perfect. You don't advocate for yourself because you don't want to seem arrogant. So you stay where you are, underutilized and overlooked, and your mind tells you it's safer this way. Your relationships stay surface level because vulnerability feels like weakness. You don't share what you're really feeling because what if they judge you? You don't ask for what you need because what if they can't give it? You don't let anyone get too close because what if they see who you really are and decide you're not worth staying for? So you stay lonely. Even in connection, even in love, you're there, but not fully there. Present, but not fully present. And the loneliness compounds because you know you're doing it to yourself, but you don't know how to stop. Your dreams fade because every time you consider taking action towards them, your mind generates 1,000 reasons why it won't work. And you listen. You treat those thoughts like facts instead of what they are. Fear dressed up as logic. Protection masquerading as wisdom. This is the weight. This is the struggle. This is what it costs to live with a mind that won't stop fighting you. But you're here now, reading this, listening to this, which means some part of you knows it doesn't have to be this way. Some part of you is ready to understand why your mind works like this and what you can do to change it. That part of you is right. This struggle is real, but it's not permanent. These patterns are powerful, but they're not unbreakable. This weight is heavy, but you don't have to carry it forever. You need to understand something that will change how you see yourself. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not fundamentally flawed or uniquely damaged. You're operating a brain that was designed for a world that no longer exists. Your mind didn't evolve to help you thrive in modern life. It evolved to keep your ancestors alive in an environment where actual predators lurked in the shadows, where being rejected from the tribe meant death, where every rustle in the bushes could be your last moment on Earth. And that brain, that ancient survival mechanism, is still running the show, still treating every challenge like a life or death situation, still scanning for threats that aren't there, still prioritizing safety over growth, certainty over possibility, survival over fulfillment. Let me show you what's actually happening inside your skull. Deep in the center of your brain sits a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It's your fear center, your threat detector, your ancient alarm system, and it's incredibly good at its job. When your ancestors heard a branch snap in the forest, the amygdala didn't wait for confirmation that it was a predator. It flooded the body with stress hormones, hijacked all higher-level thinking, and screamed one message: run. This response kept humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The ones who stopped to analyze whether that sound was really dangerous, they didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes. The ones who overreacted, who ran from every shadow, who treated every uncertainty as a threat, they lived, and you descended from them. So your amygdala inherited that same hair trigger sensitivity, that same bias toward assuming the worst, that same tendency to prioritize avoiding danger over pursuing opportunity. The problem is, your amygdala can't tell the difference between a physical threat and a social one. It can't distinguish between a predator in the forest and a difficult email from your boss. To your amygdala, rejection feels like death. Failure feels like extinction. Uncertainty feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. So when you're about to give a presentation, your amygdala treats it like you're being attacked, heart racing, palms sweating, thoughts scattering. Your body is preparing to fight or flee from a conference room full of colleagues with notepads. It's absurd, but it's automatic. It's your survival brain doing what it was designed to do, completely unaware that the environment has changed. This is why your anxiety feels so disproportionate to the actual situation. Why a text message left on read can ruin your entire evening. Why the thought of starting a new project fills you with dread. Your ancient brain is interpreting modern challenges through a prehistoric lens, and the emotional response doesn't match the actual level of danger. But it gets worse. Because your brain doesn't just overreact to threats, it's also wired to look for them constantly. This is called the negativity bias, and it's another survival feature that's now working against you. Your ancestors needed to remember where the poisonous berries were more than where the sweet ones grew. They needed to remember who betrayed them more than who helped them. The ones who focused on the positive and forgot about the dangers. They made fatal mistakes. So your brain evolved to give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. To remember criticism more vividly than praise. To scan every situation for what could go wrong rather than what could go right. One bad interaction can overshadow 10 good ones. One failure can convince you that you're not capable, even when you have years of evidence to the contrary. This is why you can receive a performance review with 15 compliments and one area for improvement, and the only thing you think about for the next week is that one critique. Your brain isn't being irrational. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do, prioritizing negative information because, evolutionarily speaking, that's what kept you alive. But you're not trying to survive in the wilderness anymore. You're trying to thrive in a complex modern world. And this negativity bias, this constant threat scanning, this assumption that everything is dangerous until proven safe, it's keeping you small. It's preventing you from taking the risks that lead to growth. It's making you see danger where there's only uncertainty, threat where there's only possibility. And here's the other piece of this puzzle. The programming didn't just come from evolution. It came from your childhood too. Before you had language to question what you were being taught, before you had the cognitive ability to analyze whether something was true, you absorbed beliefs from the world around you, from parents, teachers, caregivers, peers, and their fears became your fears. Their limitations became your limitations. Their internal narratives about what's possible and what's dangerous became the voice in your head. If you grew up with a parent who was anxious, who catastrophized, who treated the world as fundamentally unsafe, you learned that pattern. Not through explicit instruction, but through osmosis. You watched them worry, and your brain wired itself to worry. You saw them avoid risk, and your brain built pathways that equate risk with danger. If you were criticized more than you were encouraged, if your mistakes were highlighted more than your efforts, if love felt conditional on performance, your brain built a story. I'm only valuable when I'm perfect. I'm only safe when I'm in control. I'm only worthy when I succeed. These weren't conscious decisions. You didn't choose these beliefs. You were a child, trying to make sense of the world, trying to figure out how to stay safe and loved and accepted. And your brain, still developing, still forming its basic architecture, took in everything, the spoken and the unspoken, the intentional and the accidental, and it built itself around those early lessons. Maybe you learned that speaking up leads to punishment, so you became quiet. Maybe you learned that trying new things leads to failure and shame, so you became risk-averse. Maybe you learned that other people's needs matter more than yours, so you became self-sacrificing to the point of self-erasure. These patterns made sense once. They were adaptations, survival strategies for the environment you were in. But now you're in a different environment, with different challenges, different opportunities, different rules, and you're still running the old programming. You're operating on software that was installed decades ago, designed for a version of you that no longer exists, optimized for threats that are no longer real. But here's the extraordinary truth that changes everything. Your brain is not fixed. The neural pathways that currently run your life are not permanent. The patterns that feel hardwired are actually just well practiced. Your brain is more like wet clay than hardened stone. It's constantly reshaping itself based on what you do, what you think, what you practice. Every thought you have strengthens certain connections and weakens others. Every action you take carves new pathways and lets old ones fade. This is neuroplasticity, and it's the most powerful tool you have access to. Think of your brain as a forest. The thoughts you think most often are well-worn paths through that forest. You've walked them so many times that they're easy to find, easy to follow. They're your defaults. When you're stressed or tired or overwhelmed, you automatically walk these familiar trails. But here's what's remarkable. You can create new paths. You can walk in different directions. And the more you practice walking a new route, the clearer that path becomes. Meanwhile, the old paths, the ones you stop using, gradually grow over. The forest reclaims them. They don't disappear completely, but they become harder to find, harder to follow. No longer the automatic choice. This is happening in your brain all the time. Neurons that fire together, wire together. When you repeatedly think a certain thought or perform a certain action, the neurons involved in that pattern form stronger connections. The signal travels faster. The pattern becomes more automatic. This is how you learn anything: language, skills, habits. But it's also how you reinforce anxiety, self-doubt, overthinking. Every time you catastrophize, you strengthen the catastrophizing pathway. Every time you second-guess yourself, you reinforce the self-doubt circuit. Every time you avoid something that scares you, you teach your brain that fear is a reason to stop. But the opposite is also true. Every time you catch a negative thought and redirect it, you build the redirection pathway. Every time you act despite fear, you weaken fear's control. Every time you choose a different response, you carve a new neural trail. Your brain is building itself right now, in this moment, based on what you're doing with your attention. And that means you have more power than you think. The mental patterns that feel permanent are simply the ones you've practiced most. The thoughts that feel true are often just the ones you've thought most frequently. The behaviors that feel automatic are the ones you've repeated until your brain turned them into habits. But habits can be changed. Pathways can be rerouted. Patterns can be interrupted and replaced. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. This is about understanding that your brain is a learning machine, and it's been learning from your experiences, your environment, your repetitive thoughts and actions. It's been sculpting itself based on what you've practiced. And if you've been practicing worry, it got good at worrying. If you've been practicing self-doubt, it got good at doubting. If you've been practicing avoidance, it got good at finding reasons to avoid. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, because your brain is doing exactly what brains do, getting better at whatever you practice. The voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough? That's not the truth. That's just a well-practiced neural pathway, a story your brain learned to tell, reinforced through repetition until it feels like fact. The anxiety that floods your system before taking a risk? That's not a sign you shouldn't do it. That's your ancient amygdala trying to protect you from a threat that doesn't exist, using a threat detection system designed for a different world. The overthinking that paralyzes you, that's not careful consideration. That's a pattern you've reinforced by practicing it thousands of times until your brain made it the default response to uncertainty. None of this is your fault. You didn't choose your evolutionary inheritance. You didn't choose your childhood environment. You didn't consciously decide to wire your brain this way. But now you know. Now you understand what's actually happening, and with that understanding comes possibility. You're not trying to fix something that's broken. You're trying to update software that's outdated. You're not trying to become a different person. You're trying to give your brain new instructions, new patterns to practice, new pathways to walk, and your brain will respond. Because that's what it does. It adapts, it learns, it rewires based on what you practice. The question is, what are you going to practice? The transformation you're about to undergo isn't a single leap. It's a journey through 5 distinct stages, each with its own challenges and breakthroughs. Understanding where you are and where you're heading makes the process less overwhelming and more navigable. Most people move through these stages without realizing it, getting stuck at level 2 or 3 for years, wondering why they can't seem to break through. But once you can see the map, once you understand the terrain, you can move through it deliberately. Let me show you what each stage looks like, feels like, and how your life changes as you progress. Stage 1 is unconscious reactivity. This is where most people spend most of their lives, and they don't even know it. At this stage, you are your thoughts. There's no separation between you and the voice in your head. When it says you're not good enough, you believe it completely. When it tells you something will go wrong, that becomes your reality. When it generates anxiety about a future event, you experience that anxiety as truth rather than as one possible interpretation. You don't notice that you're thinking. You just experience the thoughts as reality. The stream of mental commentary runs constantly in the background, narrating your life, judging your actions, predicting outcomes, and you accept all of it without question. At this stage, your emotions control you completely. Something happens. Someone doesn't text back. You make a small mistake at work. You see something on social media, and you react immediately. The thought triggers the emotion, triggers the behavior, all in one automatic sequence. There's no space between stimulus and response, no pause, no choice. Your morning starts with whatever thought happens to arise first. If it's anxious, your whole day tilts toward anxiety. If it's defeated, you move through the hours with heaviness. You're at the mercy of mental weather patterns you don't even realize are just weather. In conversations, you're completely absorbed in your own mental commentary. Someone is talking, but half your attention is on what you're going to say next, or how you're coming across, or whether they like you. You miss entire chunks of what people actually say because you're too busy managing your internal narrative about the interaction. Challenges feel insurmountable because your first thought about them becomes your truth. I can't do this isn't recognized as a thought. It's experienced as a fact. And because it's a fact, you don't even try. The thought controls the action without you noticing the thought existed at all. This is the stage where you suffer the most, but you don't yet know why. You think your problems are external. If only you had a better job, a different relationship, more money, more time. You don't realize that the real prison is internal, built from unexamined thoughts that you've granted total authority over your life. Then something shifts, and you enter stage 2. Painful awareness. This is when you start to wake up to the fact that your thoughts are just thoughts, that the voice in your head isn't always telling the truth, that you have patterns, predictable, repetitive mental loops that run automatically and make your life harder. You catch yourself overthinking and realize, oh, I'm doing it again. You notice the catastrophizing. You see the self-doubt. You become aware of how much time you spend in your head, rehearsing conversations that haven't happened, replaying interactions that are already over, imagining scenarios that will never occur. And this awareness is painful, because now you see the prison, but you can't find the door. You watch yourself repeat the same patterns you desperately want to change. You see the thought arise. You know it's destructive, and you think it anyway. You feel the anxiety building. You recognize it's irrational, and you spiral anyway. At this stage, your mornings are filled with meta-frustration. You wake up anxious, then you get frustrated with yourself for being anxious, then you get anxious about being frustrated, and the layers compound. You're watching yourself suffer and judging yourself for suffering, which only creates more suffering. In conversations, you're now hyper-aware of your own awkwardness. You notice yourself overthinking your responses. You catch yourself performing instead of being authentic. And the awareness of the performance makes it worse. You're self-conscious about your self-consciousness. When challenges arise, you see your automatic negative reaction and you try to fight it. You tell yourself to stop thinking this way, to be more positive, to just relax. But the more you fight the thoughts, the stronger they seem to become. You're aware of the problem, but you don't yet have the tools to solve it. This stage is where many people get stuck for years. They've woken up enough to see their patterns, but not enough to change them. They know what they're doing wrong, but can't seem to do it differently. And the gap between awareness and control feels unbridgeable. But it's not, because stage 3 is where everything starts to shift. Conscious intervention. This is where you develop the ability to pause, to create space between what happens and how you respond, to catch a thought before it spirals, to notice an emotion rising and choose how to work with it. You're not perfect at this. The old patterns still activate. The negative thoughts still arise. The anxiety still shows up. But now, increasingly often, you can catch it. You can interrupt the automatic sequence. You can redirect. Someone criticizes your work, and the familiar shame starts to rise. But this time, you notice it. You name it. This is shame. This is the old pattern. And in that naming, you create distance. You're not the shame. You're the one observing the shame. And from that observer position, you have choice. You can breathe. You can remind yourself that one piece of critical feedback doesn't define your worth. You can separate the useful information from the emotional charge. You can respond from clarity instead of reacting from hurt. Your mornings start to change. You wake up, and the anxious thoughts arise. But now you catch them faster. You recognize them as thoughts rather than truth. You might say to yourself, "Good morning, anxiety. I see you. But we're not doing this today." And you redirect your attention to something constructive, your breath, your body, your intentions for the day. In conversations, you're starting to be actually present. You still notice the self-consciousness, but you can let it be there without letting it run the show. Someone is talking. The thought arises. Am I being boring? And instead of spiraling into that question, you gently bring your attention back to the person in front of you. You choose presence over performance. When challenges come, your first reaction might still be, "I can't do this." But now you catch it. You question it. You ask, "Is that actually true, or is that just fear talking?" And increasingly, you can separate the two. You can acknowledge the fear without letting it make your decisions. This stage requires practice. Daily, moment by moment practice. But the more you do it, the stronger the intervention muscle becomes. The gap between thought and reaction widens. The space where choice lives expands. And then, gradually, you notice something remarkable. The new patterns are starting to become automatic. Welcome to Stage 4, Automatic Resilience. At this stage, the conscious intervention you've been practicing starts to run on its own. Your brain has built new neural pathways, and they're becoming your default. You don't have to work as hard to redirect negative thoughts because your mind naturally gravitates toward more constructive ones. Something goes wrong, and your first thought is no longer catastrophic. It's not that you've become unrealistically positive, it's that your baseline has shifted from everything is a threat to this is manageable. Someone doesn't respond to your text, and instead of immediately assuming they're upset with you, your mind offers a range of possibilities. They're busy. They didn't see it. They'll respond when they can. The anxious interpretation still exists, but it's no longer the loudest voice. It's no longer the automatic default. Your mornings feel different. Not perfect. Not always easy. But fundamentally different. You wake up and your mind doesn't immediately reach for worry. There's a baseline of calm that wasn't there before, and when stress does arise, you move through it more quickly. The spiral doesn't grip you the way it used to. In conversations, you're genuinely there. The self-monitoring still happens occasionally, but it's background noise rather than the main channel. You can be authentic without constantly questioning whether you're doing it right. You can disagree without catastrophizing the relationship. You can be vulnerable without armor. Challenges that would have paralyzed you 6 months ago now feel navigable. Not easy. Not always comfortable. But within your capacity, you trust yourself to handle things. Not because you've become invincible, but because you've proven to yourself, repeatedly, that you can move through discomfort and come out okay on the other side. At this stage, people start to notice something different about you. They can't always name it, but they feel it. You're more grounded, more present, less reactive. There's a steadiness to you that wasn't there before. And if you keep practicing, if you keep walking the new neural pathways, you eventually arrive at Stage 5, Integrated Mastery. This is where the transformation becomes your identity. You're no longer trying to manage your mind. You operate from a fundamentally different relationship with thought itself. You've become unstoppable, not because nothing bothers you, but because nothing controls you. At this stage, you understand deeply that thoughts are just thoughts. Emotions are just emotions. They arise, they pass, they inform you, but they don't run you. You can experience fear without being paralyzed by it. You can feel doubt without letting it make your decisions. You can sit with discomfort without needing to fix it or flee from it. External chaos can't shake your core. Someone is upset with you, a project fails, plans fall apart, and you feel the impact. But it doesn't destabilize you. There's a part of you that remains steady regardless of circumstances. Not detached, not numb, just unshakable in a way that comes from deep internal knowing. Your mornings are peaceful, not because nothing is hard, but because you've stopped going to war with reality. Whatever arises, you can meet it. Whatever the day brings, you trust yourself to handle it. This isn't arrogance. It's earned confidence built from thousands of moments of proving to yourself that you're capable. In conversations, you're fully alive. You can be completely present with someone's pain without taking it on. You can hold space for difficult emotions without needing to fix them. You can speak your truth even when it's uncomfortable, because you're no longer ruled by the need for approval. You care what people think, but it doesn't control what you do. When challenges arise, you don't waste energy resisting them. You assess, you adapt, you act. Fear still visits, but it's information rather than instruction. It tells you to pay attention, not to shut down. And you've learned the difference. This is mastery, not perfection. You still have hard days. You still feel overwhelmed sometimes. You still doubt yourself occasionally. But these experiences pass through you rather than defining you. They're weather, not climate. And you've learned to navigate all weather conditions. You've become the kind of person who does hard things. Not because hard things became easy, but because you developed the capacity to do them anyway. You trust yourself in a way you never have before. And that trust changes everything. Getting to mastery requires a tool, a practical, repeatable method you can use in real time when your mind starts spiraling. Something simple enough to remember under pressure, but powerful enough to actually change your neural pathways. This is that tool, the Neural Reset Protocol. 4 steps that interrupt destructive thought patterns and install empowering ones. 4 steps you can practice right now, today, the next time your mind tries to take you somewhere you don't want to go. Observe, label, redirect, anchor. Let me show you exactly how this works. The first step is observe. This means catching the thought without judgment, creating space between you and your mental activity. Most of the time, you're completely fused with your thoughts. A thought arises, and you immediately believe it, react to it, become it. There's no gap, no space, no recognition that thinking is happening. Observing means stepping back just enough to notice. Oh, I'm having a thought. I'm thinking something right now, and I can watch it rather than become it. This sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. Because the moment you observe a thought, you've already created separation. You're no longer the thought. You're the one noticing the thought. And from that position, you have power. Let's say you're about to give a presentation. You're sitting in the room, waiting for your turn, and a thought arises. Everyone is going to see right through me. They'll know I don't belong here. In unconscious reactivity, that thought triggers immediate physical panic. Your heart races. Your palms sweat. Your mind blanks. The thought becomes your reality. But in observation, you catch it. You notice, I'm having the thought that everyone will see through me. And in that noticing, there's suddenly space. The thought is still there, but it's no longer you. It's something you're experiencing, not something you are. This observation doesn't require you to fight the thought or push it away. You're not arguing with it yet. You're simply becoming aware of it. Like you're sitting by a river, watching thoughts float by, and you've just noticed one particular log drifting past. The key here is no judgment. You're not bad for having this thought. You're not weak or broken or regressing. You're just noticing what your mind is doing. That's it. That's the whole first step, and it's enough to change everything that comes next. The second step is label. Name the pattern you're observing. Give it a specific, accurate description. When you label a thought pattern, something extraordinary happens in your brain. The act of naming activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logical thinking and emotional regulation. And when the prefrontal cortex activates, it reduces the amygdala's grip. Your fear center loses some of its power when you name what's happening. So in that moment before the presentation, you observe the thought, and then you label it. This is imposter syndrome, or this is catastrophizing, or this is my fear of judgment talking. The label doesn't have to be clinical or perfectly accurate. It just needs to name the pattern in a way that helps you recognize it as a pattern rather than as truth. You've had this thought before. You've felt this fear before. It's not new information about your competence. It's an old pattern activating, and naming it reminds you of that. Oh, this is the voice that always shows up before I do something scary. This is the part of me that tries to protect me by convincing me to stay small. In the labeling, you're both acknowledging the thought exists and reminding yourself that it's a known quantity. A familiar visitor. Not a revelation, not a fact, just a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted. The third step is redirect. Consciously choose a more accurate, empowering thought. This is not about lying to yourself. This is not toxic positivity. You're not replacing "everyone will see through me" with "I'm amazing and everyone will love me." You're replacing it with something that's actually more true, something that's both realistic and empowering. So you ask yourself, what's a more accurate thought right now? What's true that's also useful? Maybe it's, I've prepared for this. I know this material. Some people might have questions, and that's okay. I can handle questions. Or, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be clear and helpful. Or, I've done presentations before and survived. I can do this one too. The redirect has to feel believable to you. If your brain immediately rejects it as false, it won't work. You need to find the thought that's both true and supportive. The thought that acknowledges reality while also giving you permission to move forward. This is where you're actively building a new neural pathway. You're taking the mental energy that was flowing down the catastrophizing path and consciously routing it in a different direction. And every time you do this, that new path gets a little clearer, a little easier to find next time. But redirect alone isn't enough. Because thoughts are abstract, they live in your head. And under stress, your head isn't reliable. That's why you need the fourth step, anchor. Tie the new thought to a physical sensation. Your body remembers things your mind forgets. Somatic memory is powerful. So you take that redirected thought, I've prepared for this, I know this material, and you anchor it into your body. Maybe you take a deep breath, a full, slow breath that signals to your nervous system that you're safe. And as you breathe, you repeat the thought, I've prepared for this. Or maybe you adjust your posture, roll your shoulders back, lift your chest, stand or sit like someone who knows what they're talking about. And let the thought match the body. I know this material. Or maybe you press your feet firmly into the ground. Feel the stability of the floor beneath you. Feel how solid and supported you are. And let that physical grounding anchor the thought. I can handle this. The anchor creates a full body experience of the new thought. It's no longer just mental, it's embodied. And embodied experiences create stronger neural pathways than abstract ones. So now, every time you take that particular breath, or adjust your posture that specific way, or press your feet into the ground, you're activating the same neural circuit. You're reinforcing the connection between the physical sensation and the empowering thought. Over time, the anchor becomes automatic. Your body learns. When I breathe like this, I access calm. When I stand like this, I access confidence. And you can trigger that state deliberately, whenever you need it. Let me walk you through this with a different scenario, the relationship conflict loop. You text your partner something vulnerable, something that matters to you, and they don't respond right away. Immediately, the spiral starts. They're upset. They're pulling away. They're rethinking the relationship. I said too much. I scared them off. Step 1. Observe. You catch yourself mid-spiral. You notice. I'm spinning out right now. I'm creating a whole story based on one unreturned text. Just that recognition creates space. You're not in the story anymore. You're watching yourself create the story. Step 2. Label. You name it. This is my anxiety about abandonment. This is the pattern where I assume silence means rejection. The label reminds you that you've been here before. This isn't new information about your relationship. It's an old fear reactivating. Step 3. Redirect. You consciously choose a more accurate thought. What's actually true right now? Maybe. They haven't responded yet. That's all I know. There are 100 reasons they might not have texted back, and most of them have nothing to do with me. Or, I can tolerate not knowing for a while. I don't need immediate reassurance to be okay. Or, even if they are upset, we can talk about it. One difficult conversation doesn't end a relationship. You find the thought that's both true and calming. The one that creates possibility instead of closing down into catastrophe. Step 4. Anchor. You take that thought and tie it to something physical. Maybe you place your hand on your heart. Feel the warmth. Feel your own heartbeat. And as you do, you repeat, I can tolerate not knowing. Or you go for a walk. Feel your feet hitting the pavement. One step, then another. And with each step, we can talk about it. We can work through this. The physical action interrupts the mental loop, and it gives your brain something to do besides spin. Something that reinforces the new thought instead of the catastrophic one. Let's try one more. The creative block. You sit down to work on a project, a piece of writing, a design, something you've been putting off. And immediately, the resistance hits. This isn't good enough. Who am I to think I can do this? Everyone else is better at this than me. I should just quit. Step 1. Observe. You notice. Okay, the resistance is here. The critical voice has shown up. I'm having thoughts about not being good enough. You're not fighting it yet. You're just seeing it clearly. Step 2. Label. This is my inner critic. This is the perfectionism that keeps me from starting. This is fear of judgment disguised as self-protection. Naming it takes away some of its power. This isn't the truth about your work. It's a predictable pattern that activates whenever you're about to be vulnerable. Step 3. Redirect. You choose a thought that's more accurate and more useful. Maybe. I don't have to be the best. I just have to make something. Creation requires making bad first drafts. Everyone starts messy. Or, this feeling isn't evidence that I can't do it. It's evidence that I care about doing it well. And caring is a good thing. Or, I can tolerate making something imperfect. The only way to get better is to practice. And practice means doing it badly before I do it well. You're not pretending you're brilliant. You're just refusing to let fear masquerade as fact. Step 4. Anchor. You tie the new thought to a physical action. Maybe you start typing. Just anything. Just words on a page. And with each keystroke you reinforce, I just have to make something. Or you stretch your hands, feel the sensation of movement. And as you move, creation requires making bad first drafts. Or you take 3 deep breaths before you begin. And with each breath, I can tolerate making something imperfect. The physical action makes the thought real, makes it embodied, makes it something you can return to when the resistance tries to pull you back. This is the protocol. Observe, label, redirect, anchor. It takes 30 seconds, maybe less. But those 30 seconds interrupt the automatic pattern and install a new one. And every time you do it, you're rewiring your brain, building new pathways, training your mind to default to something other than catastrophe. At first, you'll need to do this consciously, deliberately, every single time. It will feel mechanical, forced, like you're trying to remember a script while your house is on fire. But keep practicing, because the more you use this protocol, the more automatic it becomes. The observation happens faster. The labeling becomes instant. The redirect feels natural. The anchor becomes reflexive. And eventually, your brain starts doing parts of it without you even noticing. You'll catch yourself in a spiral and immediately think, oh, this is just catastrophizing. And you'll redirect without even going through all 4 steps consciously. That's when you know it's working. That's when the new pathway is becoming your default. This tool works because it addresses thought at every level: mental, emotional, physical. It gives you something concrete to do when your mind is spinning. It transforms you from victim of your thoughts to operator of your thoughts. And that changes everything. The neural reset protocol is your foundation. But mastery requires more than one tool. You need a complete arsenal, complementary practices that work together, each reinforcing the others, gradually expanding your capacity to handle whatever life delivers. Think of these as layers of protection and growth. Each one addresses a different aspect of mental resilience. Each one builds on the work you're already doing, and together they create a system that makes you genuinely unstoppable. Let's start with cognitive rehearsal. This is the practice of mentally experiencing success before the actual event occurs. Your brain doesn't distinguish perfectly between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you mentally rehearse something in detail, you're activating the same neural pathways you'll use when you actually do it. You're pre-wiring confidence. You're teaching your brain that this thing you're about to do is familiar territory, not unknown danger. Athletes use this constantly. They visualize the perfect shot, the winning race, the flawless routine, and their bodies respond. Their muscles fire in micro-movements. Their nervous systems practice the calm focus they'll need under pressure. You can do the same thing. Before a difficult conversation, before a presentation, before any high-stakes moment, you mentally walk through it going well. Not just vaguely imagining success, actually rehearsing it, with details, with sensory information, with emotional texture. Let's say you have a presentation next week. You're already anxious about it. Your mind keeps generating disaster scenarios, forgetting your words, stumbling through explanations, seeing judgment on people's faces. Cognitive rehearsal means deliberately replacing those disaster scenarios with success scenarios. But you have to do it right. You can't just think it'll go great and move on. You have to experience it mentally. Close your eyes. See yourself walking into the room. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice what you're wearing. See the faces of the people there. Feel the nerves in your stomach, and see yourself breathing through them. Now watch yourself begin. Hear your voice, clear and steady. See yourself making eye contact. Notice how people are listening, engaged. Feel the satisfaction of explaining something well. See someone nod in understanding. Feel the flow state as you move through your material. Experience the whole thing, start to finish, going well. Not perfectly. You don't need perfect. Just well. Competent. Effective. When you do this, really do it, with vivid detail, your brain creates a memory of succeeding. And when the actual moment arrives, it feels less foreign, less threatening. Your amygdala sees it as something you've done before, not something unknown and dangerous. Practice this daily leading up to the event. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Each time you're strengthening the neural pathway of success. You're building confidence at the neurological level. But sometimes, despite all your mental work, you still get stuck in rumination cycles. Your mind grabs onto something and won't let go. You replay the same scenario, analyze the same problem, spiral in the same thought loop for hours. This is where pattern interruption rituals come in. Physical movements or environmental changes that forcibly break the cycle. Your mind operates in patterns, but so does your body. And when you change your physical state dramatically enough, you can snap your mental state out of its loop. This isn't about suppressing the thought. It's about recognizing when thinking has become unproductive and giving your brain a hard reset. Create a specific ritual you only use for this purpose. It has to be distinctive enough that your brain associates it with pattern breaking. Maybe it's 20 jumping jacks. Maybe it's stepping outside and taking 10 deep breaths of cold air. Maybe it's splashing cold water on your face. Maybe it's putting on a specific song and dancing for 3 minutes. Maybe it's going to a different room in your house and standing on one foot for 60 seconds. The specific action doesn't matter. What matters is that it's physical, it's immediate, and it jolts your system out of the groove it's stuck in. When you catch yourself ruminating, going over the same thing for the 5th time with no new insights, just more anxiety, you deploy the ritual. You stop mid-thought and do the physical action. This serves 2 purposes. First, it interrupts the loop mechanically. You can't ruminate while doing jumping jacks. Your brain has to focus on the movement. Second, over time, the ritual itself becomes a neural anchor for thought loop broken, moving on. But while you're building new patterns and breaking old ones, you also need to address the beliefs underneath them, the stories your mind tells about who you are and what you're capable of. This is where the evidence journal becomes essential. Your inner critic has been building a case against you for years. It's collected every failure, every embarrassing moment, every time you weren't enough. And it uses that evidence to reinforce limiting beliefs. You're not smart enough. You're not talented enough. You can't handle hard things. The evidence journal builds the opposite case. It documents proof that contradicts your limiting beliefs. Hard evidence that your inner critic is wrong. Get a notebook or create a document on your phone. Every day, write down evidence that contradicts the story your mind tells. If your mind says you're not capable, write down something you accomplished today. Even something small. You had a difficult conversation and held your ground. You solved a problem at work. You showed up when you didn't feel like it. If your mind says people don't like you, write down evidence of connection. Someone laughed at your joke. A colleague asked for your opinion. A friend texted you just to check in. If your mind says you always fail, write down times you succeeded, projects you completed, challenges you overcame, moments you were brave even when you were scared. The key is specificity. Don't just write "good day at work." Write "presented my idea in the meeting even though my voice shook and 2 people said it was worth exploring." Don't write "nice conversation." Write "told my friend I was struggling, and instead of judging me, they shared that they've felt the same way." You're building a case file, and over time, that file becomes undeniable. Your inner critic says you're not capable, and you have 50 entries proving otherwise. It says you always mess up relationships, and you have months of evidence showing connection, repair, growth. When the limiting belief arises, you don't argue with it abstractly. You pull out the evidence. You show your brain the data. And data is harder to dismiss than positive affirmations. But even with all these internal tools, you can't do this work in isolation. You need human connection. You need witnesses to your transformation. You need to practice being known. This is where strategic vulnerability comes in. Choosing specific, trusted relationships where you practice thinking aloud without shame. Hidden fears have power. Thoughts you keep secret gain strength in the darkness. But when you speak them out loud to someone safe, they lose their grip. Find 1 or 2 people, a therapist, a close friend, a partner, a mentor, who can hold space for your mess without trying to fix it. People who won't judge you for having doubts or fears or destructive thoughts. And practice being honest with them. Not about everything, not with everyone, but strategically with the people who've earned your trust. When the imposter syndrome hits, instead of hiding it, you say, "I'm having the thought that I don't deserve this opportunity. I know it's probably not true, but it feels very real right now." When you're catastrophizing about a relationship, instead of pretending everything is fine, you say, "My mind is telling me this person is going to leave. Can I just say that out loud so it feels less overwhelming?" What happens when you do this is remarkable. First, the act of speaking the fear reduces its intensity. Something about externalizing it makes it less consuming. Second, the other person almost always responds with recognition. "I've felt that too. That's so normal." And suddenly you're not alone in it. You're not uniquely broken. Third, and most importantly, you prove to yourself that you can be vulnerable and survive it. That being known doesn't lead to rejection. That showing your struggles doesn't make people leave. This practice weakens the power of hidden fears. It teaches your brain that authenticity is safe. And over time, you start carrying less weight, because you're not using all your energy to hide. But alongside all this emotional and relational work, you also need to prove to yourself, concretely and repeatedly, that you're capable of taking action. This is where micro-wins architecture becomes crucial. Deliberately designing small, achievable goals that create momentum and prove capability. Your brain learns from evidence. And every time you set a goal and achieve it, you're providing evidence that you can do what you set out to do. You're building self-trust. But most people set goals that are too big, too vague, or too dependent on factors outside their control, and then they fail, which reinforces the belief that they're not capable. Micro-wins are different. They're small enough that you can definitely achieve them, specific enough that you know exactly what success looks like, and within your control, so external circumstances can't sabotage you. Instead of get in shape, it's do 10 push-ups 3 times this week. Instead of write a book, it's write for 15 minutes today. Instead of be more confident, it's speak up once in tomorrow's meeting. The goal isn't to achieve something impressive. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can commit to something and follow through. And then do it again and again. Each micro-win deposits into your self-trust account. Each one builds the neural pathway of capability. Each one gives you concrete evidence to reference when your mind says you can't stick to anything. And here's what's beautiful. These tools compound. They work synergistically. You use cognitive rehearsal to mentally prepare for a challenge. You complete the challenge, even imperfectly, and that becomes a micro-win. You write about it in your evidence journal, building your case against limiting beliefs. When you start to ruminate about what went wrong, you use a pattern interruption ritual. And when the deeper fear underneath arises, you process it through strategic vulnerability. Each tool reinforces the others. Each practice makes the next one easier. The cognitive rehearsal makes the real event less scary. The successful real event gives you evidence for your journal. The evidence in your journal makes it easier to redirect catastrophic thoughts. The pattern interruption keeps you from spiraling when those thoughts arise. The strategic vulnerability helps you process the emotional residue. The micro wins build your confidence to try the next challenge. It's a system, a complete architecture for mental resilience. And the more you use these tools, the more automatic they become. You won't have to consciously think, time for cognitive rehearsal, or I should interrupt this pattern. Your brain will start reaching for these strategies naturally, the same way it used to reach for catastrophizing and avoidance. You're expanding your window of tolerance, gradually increasing the range of emotions you can experience without shutting down or spiraling out, gradually building your capacity to handle complexity, uncertainty, discomfort. This is what it means to build an arsenal. Not one technique you try once and abandon, but multiple complementary practices that you integrate into your life until they become who you are. Start with one. Maybe the evidence journal, because it's concrete and daily. Practice it for a week. Then add another. Maybe pattern interruption rituals for when you catch yourself ruminating. Layer them in gradually. You don't need to be perfect at all of them. You just need to keep practicing. Keep reaching for these tools instead of the old patterns. Keep choosing growth over comfort. And your brain will respond, because that's what brains do. They adapt to what you practice. You're building yourself into someone who can handle anything. Not because nothing bothers you, but because you have tools for everything that does. Tools and techniques will only take you so far. If you're practicing the neural reset protocol every day, but sleeping 4 hours a night, eating junk food, sitting motionless for 12 hours, and surrounding yourself with people who reinforce your old patterns, you're building on a foundation that's constantly crumbling. Long-term transformation requires more than mental strategies. It requires an entire ecosystem that supports the person you're becoming. Your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, your environment, your relationships. All of these either accelerate your growth or undermine it. Let's build the foundation that makes everything else sustainable. Start with sleep. This is non-negotiable, though most people treat it like it's optional. Every neural pathway you practice during the day, every new thought pattern you install, every moment you choose differently, all of that gets consolidated during sleep. Sleep is when your brain takes the temporary changes you made and turns them into lasting structure. Think of it this way. During the day, you're practicing. You're sketching out new routes through your mental forest. But sleep is the construction crew that comes in at night and paves those routes into permanent roads. When you sleep, your brain does something remarkable. It strengthens the synaptic connections you used during the day and prunes away the ones you didn't. It takes the experiences you had, the patterns you practiced, and literally builds them into your neural architecture. This process is called memory consolidation, and it doesn't happen if you're not sleeping enough. You can do all the cognitive rehearsal, all the redirecting, all the pattern interruption you want. But if you're only sleeping 5 or 6 hours, your brain doesn't have time to solidify those changes. The new pathways stay temporary. The old ones remain stronger. You wake up and the work you did yesterday didn't stick. You're starting from scratch again. And over time, this creates a devastating cycle. You work hard to change. You don't sleep enough for the change to consolidate. You don't see progress. You get discouraged. You give up. So if you're serious about rewiring your mind, you have to be serious about sleep. 7 to 9 hours. Consistently. Not just on weekends. Every night. And quality matters as much as quantity. You need deep sleep for physical restoration and a REM, sleep for emotional processing and memory consolidation, which means you need to protect your sleep environment and your pre-sleep routine. Your bedroom should be dark, cool, quiet. Your last hour before bed should be calm. Not scrolling through social media, watching outrage and comparison. Not working on stressful projects. Not having intense conversations. Wind down. Read something that doesn't activate your nervous system. Listen to music. Take a warm shower. Let your brain know that the day is ending, that it's safe to let go, that sleep is coming. This isn't luxury. This is infrastructure. This is the foundation everything else is built on. And while sleep builds the structure, nutrition provides the raw materials. Your brain is an organ, a physical, biological organ that requires specific nutrients to function well. And the modern diet, high in processed foods, sugar, and inflammatory ingredients, is sabotaging your mental state every single day. Blood sugar swings create emotional volatility. When you eat a high-sugar breakfast, your blood sugar spikes. You feel energized, focused, maybe even optimistic. But then insulin floods your system, your blood sugar crashes, and suddenly you're irritable, anxious, unable to focus. Your mind goes to dark places. Your resilience disappears, and you think it's you. You think you're just moody or weak or unable to manage your emotions. But often it's just biology. It's your blood sugar on a roller coaster and your brain chemistry going along for the ride. Stabilize your blood sugar and you stabilize your mood. Eat protein and healthy fats with every meal. Minimize processed carbohydrates and added sugars. Don't skip meals. Don't let yourself get so hungry that you reach for whatever's fastest. And pay attention to inflammation. Chronic inflammation affects your brain directly. It impairs cognitive function. It increases anxiety and depression. It makes everything harder. Where does inflammation come from? Processed foods, excess sugar, industrial seed oils, foods your body treats as invaders rather than nourishment, but also lack of omega-3 fatty acids, insufficient fiber, poor gut health. Your gut and your brain are connected through what's called the gut-brain axis. The bacteria in your digestive system produce neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, that directly affect your mood and cognition. When your gut health is poor, your mental health suffers. So eat real food, vegetables, fruits, quality proteins, healthy fats, fermented foods for gut bacteria, fiber for digestive health, water instead of sugar-laden drinks. This isn't about being perfect. It's about giving your brain the raw materials it needs to build the mental infrastructure you're practicing. You can't rewire your brain on a foundation of processed food and blood sugar crashes. Now let's talk about movement, not exercise for appearance, not workouts to burn calories or build muscle, though those might be side effects. Movement as mental medicine. When you move your body, especially in ways that elevate your heart rate, your brain releases something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF. Think of it as fertilizer for neural growth. BDNF promotes neuroplasticity. It helps your brain form new connections, strengthen existing ones, and repair damaged pathways. It's literally growth factor for your mind. This means that movement accelerates every mental practice you're doing. The cognitive rehearsal works better. The pattern interruption sticks faster. The neural reset protocol carves deeper pathways. All of it becomes more effective when you're moving your body regularly. But movement also serves another crucial function. It releases stress that your body is holding. Remember, your nervous system doesn't distinguish between physical and psychological threats. When you're anxious about a presentation, your body prepares to run or fight. Stress hormones flood your system. Your muscles tense. Energy mobilizes. But you don't run. You don't fight. You sit in a chair and try to think your way through the anxiety. And all that mobilized energy has nowhere to go. It stays trapped in your body, creating tension, restlessness, that jittery feeling you can't shake. Movement completes the stress cycle. It gives your body permission to discharge that energy. A 20-minute walk, a dance session in your living room, a bike ride, anything that gets you breathing harder and moving freely. After movement, your nervous system recalibrates. The tension releases. Your mind clears. You return to baseline instead of staying revved up all day. And there's another layer. Movement builds embodied confidence. The way you carry yourself physically affects how you feel mentally. When you move with strength, with coordination, with freedom, you're sending signals to your brain. I'm capable. I'm powerful. I inhabit this body with agency. You don't have to become an athlete. You just have to move daily in ways that feel good, in ways that elevate your heart rate and remind you that you're alive in a body, not just a head. But even with perfect sleep, nutrition, and movement, you can still undermine yourself through your environment. Your physical space shapes your mental state more than you realize. A cluttered desk creates mental clutter. A disorganized bedroom creates restless sleep. A workspace filled with distractions makes focus nearly impossible. Environmental design means deliberately creating spaces that support the behaviors you want to practice. If you're trying to reduce phone usage before bed, don't keep your phone on your nightstand. Charge it in another room. Replace it with a book. If you're trying to build a meditation practice, create a specific corner of your home that's only for that. A cushion, a candle, nothing else. Train your brain to associate that space with stillness. If you're trying to do creative work, design a workspace that invites focus. Clear surfaces, good lighting, no notifications pinging constantly. This isn't about having a perfect home. It's about removing friction from good behaviors and adding friction to destructive ones. Make the healthy choice the easy choice. Put your workout clothes next to your bed so they're the first thing you see in the morning. Put a water bottle on your desk so you don't have to think about hydration. Put books in places where you used to scroll your phone. And pay attention to what you consume mentally through your environment. If you start every morning scrolling through news designed to outrage you, you're priming your nervous system for threat. If you end every night watching content that makes you compare yourself to others, you're programming insecurity right before sleep. Your environment includes what you let into your mind, the media you consume, the conversations you engage in, the content that fills the gaps in your day. Curate it deliberately. Choose inputs that reinforce the identity you're building, not the one you're trying to leave behind. But the most powerful environmental factor isn't your physical space. It's the people around you. You become like the people you spend time with. Not intentionally, not consciously, but inevitably. Their habits become your habits. Their standards become your standards. Their beliefs about what's possible seep into your own thinking. If you're surrounded by people who complain constantly, who avoid challenges, who treat growth as suspicious or threatening, you'll absorb that worldview. It'll become harder to believe in your own transformation, harder to maintain new patterns when everyone around you reinforces the old ones. But if you surround yourself with people who are also growing, who normalize doing hard things, who treat setbacks as data instead of identity, you'll rise to that standard. Their resilience will make your resilience feel normal. Their courage will make your courage feel possible. This is community and modeling, and it's essential. Find people who reflect the identity you're building, not people who are perfect, not people who never struggle, but people who are committed to growth, who do the work, who show up even when it's hard. This might mean joining a group, a class, a community. This might mean reaching out to someone you admire and asking to meet for coffee. This might mean distancing yourself from relationships that keep you stuck. And that last part is hard, because loyalty feels important, because you don't want to abandon people. But you have to understand, you can't save anyone by drowning with them. If someone in your life consistently undermines your growth, mocks your efforts, or demands that you stay small to make them comfortable, you have a choice to make. Not necessarily to cut them out completely, but to create boundaries, to limit their influence, to protect your transformation from people who need you to stay the same. Surround yourself with people who want you to succeed, who celebrate your wins without jealousy, who support you through failures without judgment, who normalize the behaviors you're trying to build. And be that person for others. Model the resilience you're developing. Share your struggles honestly. Celebrate other people's growth. Create the kind of community you need by being the kind of person others need. This is the ecosystem. Sleep that consolidates your neural pathways. Nutrition that provides the raw materials for brain function. Movement that accelerates plasticity and releases stress. Environment that removes friction from growth. Community that normalizes excellence. None of these alone will transform you, but together they create the conditions where transformation becomes inevitable. They turn willpower into systems. They turn temporary changes into permanent identity. You can't override a terrible foundation with mental techniques alone. But when you build the right ecosystem, the mental work becomes so much easier. The new patterns stick faster. The old ones fade quicker. The person you're becoming has the support structure to actually emerge and stay. You might be wondering if this actually works, if these practices really change anything fundamental, or if it's just positive thinking dressed up in complicated language. So let me show you what's happening inside your brain at the cellular level. Let me show you why this works, how it works, and why the science behind it is as beautiful as it is powerful. Your brain is not fixed. This is the foundational truth that changes everything. For most of human history, we believed the brain you were born with was the brain you died with. That neural structure was set by early adulthood and remained essentially unchanged. We were wrong. Your brain is a living sculpture, constantly reshaping itself based on what you do with your attention. Every thought you think, every action you take, every experience you have, all of it literally changes the physical structure of your brain. This is neuroplasticity, and it's not metaphorical. It's measurable, observable, undeniable. Here's how it works at the most fundamental level. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. Each neuron connects to thousands of other neurons through junctions called synapses. And these synaptic connections are where everything happens. Every thought, every memory, every skill, every habit. When you think a thought, Electrical signals fire from neuron to neuron across these synapses. And here's the crucial part. The more frequently a particular pathway fires, the stronger the connection becomes. This process is called long-term potentiation. When neurons fire together repeatedly, the synapse between them physically changes. The connection becomes more efficient. The signal travels faster. Less stimulation is needed to activate the pathway. This is the biological basis of the phrase, neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you practice the neural reset protocol, you're firing a specific sequence of neurons, observer neurons, labeling neurons, redirecting neurons, anchoring neurons, and every time you do it, those connections strengthen. Meanwhile, the old pathway, the catastrophizing route, the self-doubt spiral, sits unused, and synapses that aren't used weaken. The connection becomes less efficient. The pathway becomes harder to access. This isn't willpower. This isn't trying harder. This is biology. You're literally rebuilding the physical architecture of your brain through repetition. Researchers at Massachusetts General Hospital used brain imaging to study people who practiced mindfulness meditation for 8 weeks. They found measurable changes in brain structure. The hippocampus, involved in learning and memory, showed increased gray matter density. The amygdala, the fear center, showed decreased density. 8 weeks, the brain physically changed shape. Other studies have shown that London taxi drivers, who must memorize the entire city layout, develop enlarged hippocampi in the regions associated with spatial memory. Professional musicians show enlarged areas in motor cortex and auditory processing regions. The brain builds itself to match what you practice. You're doing the same thing. You're practicing new thought patterns, and your brain is physically restructuring to support them. But there's another layer to this, another network in your brain that's crucial to understand. It's called the default mode network, and it's active when you're not focused on anything in particular, when your mind is wandering, when you're daydreaming or ruminating or lost in thought. For most people, the default mode network runs a specific type of program, self-referential thinking. It narrates your life. It analyzes your past. It worries about your future. It compares you to others. It creates and reinforces your sense of a separate, solid self that needs to be protected and promoted. This network isn't bad. It's necessary for planning, for learning from the past, for imagining the future. But in most people, it's hyperactive. It runs constantly, and much of what it produces is rumination, anxiety, self-criticism. Research from Yale University showed that meditation and mindfulness practices literally change the default mode network's activity. Regular practitioners show reduced activation in this network. Their minds wander less. And when the network does activate, it's less focused on self-referential rumination. The brain scans show this clearly. Experienced meditators have different baseline brain activity than non-meditators. Even when they're not actively meditating, their default mode network is quieter, less self-obsessed, more present. This is what you're building toward. A brain that doesn't automatically narrate everything through the lens of threat and self-protection. A brain that can be present without constant mental commentary. And the mechanism is the same: repetition. Every time you practice observing your thoughts, instead of being consumed by them, you're weakening the default mode network's grip. You're teaching your brain that there's another mode of operating. Now let's talk about stress physiology, because this is where things get serious. Chronic stress doesn't just feel bad, it physically damages your brain. When you're stressed, your body releases cortisol. In short bursts, cortisol is helpful. It mobilizes energy. It sharpens focus. It helps you respond to threats. But when stress becomes chronic, when cortisol stays elevated day after day, it becomes toxic to brain tissue. Specifically, it shrinks the hippocampus, the region responsible for learning, memory, and emotional regulation. Studies show that people with chronic stress and anxiety disorders have measurably smaller hippocampi than healthy controls. At the same time, chronic cortisol enlarges the amygdala. Your fear center grows. It becomes more sensitive, more reactive, more likely to interpret neutral situations as threatening. This creates a vicious cycle. Stress shrinks your capacity for emotional regulation, while simultaneously making you more reactive to stress. Your window of tolerance narrows. Everything feels harder. You're operating with a damaged regulatory system and an overactive alarm system. But here's the remarkable part. This damage is reversible. Research from Harvard Medical School showed that mindfulness-based stress reduction programs literally reverse these structural changes. After 8 weeks of practice, participants showed increased hippocampal volume and decreased amygdala reactivity. The brain heals itself when you change how you relate to stress. The practices you're learning, the neural reset protocol, the pattern interruption, the cognitive rehearsal, all of these reduce chronic stress. They give your brain the conditions it needs to repair the damage, to rebuild the hippocampus, to calm the amygdala. You're not just learning to manage stress better. You're physically restructuring your brain to be less vulnerable to it. There's another mechanism at work here that's equally powerful, the reticular activating system. This is a network of neurons in your brainstem that acts as a filter for reality. Every second, your senses take in about 11 million bits of information, but your conscious mind can only process about 40 bits per second. So your brain has to filter. It has to decide what's important and what to ignore, and the reticular activating system makes that decision based on what you've primed it to notice. This is why, when you're thinking about buying a red car, you suddenly see red cars everywhere. They were always there. But now your brain has been told red cars are relevant, so your reticular activating system flags them for your conscious attention. The same thing happens with thoughts. If you've trained your brain to look for evidence that you're not good enough, your reticular activating system will filter reality to show you exactly that. Someone gives you mixed feedback, and your brain highlights the criticism and filters out the praise. But you can reprogram this filter. The evidence journal does this explicitly. By deliberately noticing and recording evidence of your capability, you're training your reticular activating system to look for competence instead of inadequacy. Over time, your brain starts automatically noticing opportunities instead of just threats, possibilities instead of just problems, evidence of growth instead of just failure. You're not changing reality. You're changing which aspects of reality your brain pays attention to. And since you can only act on what you notice, changing your filter changes your entire experience of life. This is why attention is so powerful. Where attention goes, neural energy flows. Where neural energy flows, structure grows. Your brain is constantly asking, what matters? What should I pay attention to? What should I build infrastructure to support? And it answers those questions based on what you practice. If you practice catastrophizing, your brain builds catastrophizing infrastructure. If you practice gratitude, it builds gratitude infrastructure. If you practice courage, it builds courage infrastructure. Cognitive behavioral therapy research has proven this over decades. Thousands of studies show that changing thought patterns changes brain function. People with depression show different neural activity than healthy controls. But after successful CBT, their brain scans look like healthy controls. The neural patterns normalize. not because they learned to fake being happy, because they actually changed how their brains process information. Longitudinal studies on mindset intervention show similar results. Carol Dweck's research at Stanford demonstrated that teaching people growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed, changes academic performance, career trajectory, relationship quality. Not through magical thinking, but through changing which neural pathways get reinforced. When you believe you can grow, you try harder. When you try harder, you activate learning circuits. When learning circuits activate repeatedly, they strengthen. Your brain builds capacity for growth because you're practicing growth. All of this is happening simultaneously. Neuroplasticity is reshaping your synapses. The default mode network is quieting. Your hippocampus is healing and growing. Your amygdala is calming. Your reticular activating system is filtering reality differently. You're not just thinking different thoughts. You're becoming a different nervous system. And this is why the practices work even when you don't feel like they're working. Even when you're practicing the neural reset protocol and it feels mechanical and fake, you're still firing neurons together. You're still strengthening connections. The structure is changing beneath your conscious awareness. You might not feel different today than yesterday, but scan your brain in 8 weeks, and the changes will be visible, measurable, real. This is also why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need to meditate for hours. You don't need to completely eliminate negative thoughts. You just need to practice regularly. 5 minutes of meditation daily creates more lasting change than occasional hour-long sessions, because neuroplasticity responds to repetition over time, not to sporadic intensity. You're training your brain the way you'd train a muscle. Progressive, consistent challenge, rest and recovery, gradual adaptation, and your brain will adapt, because that's what it's designed to do. It's a learning machine, an adaptation engine, a living sculpture that builds itself based on how you use it. The science is clear, the research is overwhelming, the mechanisms are understood. This isn't theory, it's not speculation. It's measurable biology. Your thoughts change your brain changes your behavior changes your life. And it all starts with attention. Where you place your attention determines which neural pathways strengthen. Which pathways strengthen determines which thoughts become automatic. Which thoughts become automatic determines how you experience reality. You're not trying to control every thought. You're trying to build infrastructure that makes constructive thoughts the path of least resistance. And every practice, every tool, every technique you're learning is contributing to that infrastructure, each one triggering neuroplastic changes at the cellular level, each one reshaping the living sculpture of your brain. This is why it works. This is how it works. This is the science beneath the practice. You're not hoping for change. You're engineering it. Neuron by neuron, synapse by synapse, thought by thought. Your brain is building itself right now, in this moment, based on what you're doing with your attention. So choose carefully. Because what you practice, you become. Understanding the science is one thing. Practicing the tools in normal life is another. But the real test comes when everything falls apart. When you lose your job suddenly. When someone you trusted betrays you. When you fail publicly and spectacularly. When you receive the diagnosis you feared. When the relationship ends. When the crisis hits without warning and your whole world tilts sideways. This is when you discover whether the work you've done actually holds, whether the neural pathways you've built are strong enough to carry you through real catastrophe. whether unstoppable means anything when the storm is actually raging. Let me be clear about something. Being unstoppable doesn't mean you're unaffected by pain. It doesn't mean you don't feel devastated when devastating things happen. It doesn't mean you smile through tragedy or pretend everything is fine when it's not. Being unstoppable means you don't break when you bend. It means you feel everything fully without letting it destroy you. It means you move through the hardest moments of your life with grace, agency, and the knowledge that you will eventually find your way through. So let's talk about how to actually do that. First, understand that crisis requires different protocols than normal life. When everything is falling apart, you're not doing cognitive rehearsal or building your evidence journal. You're in survival mode, and you need survival tools. Crisis Protocol Step 1. Immediate grounding. When you're overwhelmed, when panic is rising, when you can't think straight, you need to get out of your head and into your body. Right now, the fastest way to do this is through breath. Not normal breathing. Deliberate, controlled breath that signals to your nervous system that you're safe, even when everything feels dangerous. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Breathe out for 6 counts. Hold for 2 counts. Repeat. The longer exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode that counteracts fight or flight. You're manually overriding your panic response. Do this for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, however long it takes for your heart rate to slow, for your thoughts to become slightly less chaotic, for reality to feel slightly less overwhelming, or use physical grounding. Press your feet into the floor. Feel the solidity beneath you. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This pulls you out of the mental spiral and into sensory reality. You're reminding your brain that right now, in this exact moment, you're physically safe. The catastrophe might be real, but you're still here, still breathing, still standing. Crisis Protocol Step 2. Permission to feel without drowning. You're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel grief, rage, fear, despair. And that's not weakness. That's not regression. That's being human in the face of real loss. But there's a difference between feeling emotions and drowning in them, between processing pain and letting pain consume your entire identity. You need to give yourself permission to feel everything, while also creating boundaries around when and how you feel it. Set aside specific time to fall apart. 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you need. During that time, you let yourself feel it all. You cry. You scream into a pillow. You write the rage-filled letter you'll never send. You let the grief move through you without resistance. But then you stop. You return to the present. You engage with what needs to be done. You function. This isn't suppression. This is strategic compartmentalization during active trauma. You're containing the emotional flood so it doesn't drown everything else you need to do to survive. You tell yourself, I will feel this fully. I will process this completely. But right now, I need to make it through today. Right now, I need to focus on the next right action. And you do. You put the emotion in a container, knowing you'll open it again later, knowing you're not avoiding it, just timing it. Crisis Protocol Step 3. Next right action. When everything is overwhelming, don't try to solve the whole problem. Don't try to figure out the next month or the next year. Just find the next right action. What's the one thing you can do in the next hour that moves you even slightly towards stability? Maybe it's making a phone call. Maybe it's sending an email. Maybe it's researching your options. Maybe it's just eating something because you haven't eaten all day. Find it. Do it. Then find the next one. You're not fixing everything. You're just moving, one action at a time, proving to yourself that you still have agency even when everything feels out of control. Let me show you what this looks like in real scenarios. You lose your job, not because of performance, just restructuring, budget cuts, bad luck, and suddenly the identity you built around your career is gone. The financial stability you counted on is threatened. The future you imagined doesn't exist anymore. The panic hits. The catastrophizing starts. How will you pay rent? What will you tell people? What if you can't find another job? What if this ruins everything? Stop. Breathe. 4 in. 4 hold. 6 out. 2 hold. Again. Ground yourself. You're sitting in your apartment. You're breathing. Right now, in this moment, you're okay. Give yourself permission to feel the shock, the anger, the fear. Set a timer for 30 minutes. Feel it all. Let it be as big as it needs to be. Then stop. Come back. Ask, what's the next right action? Maybe it's updating your resume. Maybe it's reaching out to your network. Maybe it's researching unemployment benefits. Maybe it's just taking a shower because you haven't moved in 6 hours. Do that one thing. Then the next. You're not solving the whole crisis today. You're just taking the next step. And you practice the neural reset protocol even in the middle of this. When the thought arises, my career is over, I'm a failure, you observe it. You label it. This is catastrophizing. This is my fear talking. You redirect. I lost a job, not my entire career. I have skills. I have experience. This is a setback, not an ending. You anchor, hand on your chest, feeling your heartbeat. I can handle this. I've handled hard things before. The tools still work. Even here, even now. Or imagine betrayal. Someone you trusted deeply, a partner, a friend, a business partner, lies to you, uses you, breaks something you thought was sacred. The pain is enormous. The disillusionment is crushing. Your ability to trust feels shattered. You want to spiral. You want to decide that everyone is terrible, that vulnerability is weakness, that you should never let anyone close again. But you catch it. You observe. I'm in pain. I'm creating a story about what this means about me, about people, about the world. You label. This is my protection mechanism trying to keep me from ever being hurt again. This is trauma response. You redirect. This person betrayed me. That doesn't mean everyone will. This hurt me deeply. That doesn't mean I was wrong to trust. I can learn from this without closing myself off to all connection. You anchor. Breathe. Feel your feet on the ground. I'm allowed to be hurt. I'm allowed to grieve this. And I'll be okay. Post-crisis integration is just as important as crisis management. This is where you decide what the experience means, what you take from it, how it shapes you going forward. And you have to be careful here, because it's easy to let crisis become identity, to become the person this happened to let the trauma define everything that comes next. You were betrayed, but you're not someone who was betrayed forever. You experienced job loss, but you're not someone who can't keep a job. The experience is part of your history. It's not the totality of your identity. Process what happened. Extract the lessons. Understand what you could control and what you couldn't. Acknowledge the pain without letting it become a permanent lens through which you see everything. And be careful of toxic silver lining. You don't have to pretend the crisis was actually a good thing. You don't have to be grateful for trauma. You don't have to frame devastation as a gift. Sometimes terrible things happen, and they're just terrible. You don't need to spiritualize your suffering to make it meaningful. But you can find meaning anyway. Not in the crisis itself, but in how you moved through it, in what you learned about yourself, in the strength you discovered, in the people who showed up, in the resilience you built. You can rebuild with new wisdom without pretending the destruction was necessary. And then there's composure under scrutiny. When people are watching, when you're being criticized, when you're misunderstood, when you're being tested publicly, someone attacks your work, publicly, harshly, maybe unfairly. Your first instinct is defensiveness, shame, the urge to justify, explain, attack back. But you pause. You observe the reaction rising. You label it. This is my ego feeling threatened. This is my fear of judgment. You redirect. Criticism isn't attack. Feedback isn't rejection. I can listen to this without internalizing it as truth about my worth. You anchor. Breathe. Relax your shoulders. I'm secure enough to hear this without breaking. And you respond from that grounded place. Or you don't respond at all. Because you've learned that not every criticism requires a defense. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. You stay centered. You stay clear. You let other people have their opinions without those opinions controlling your sense of self. This is mastery. Not visible in calm waters, only proven in storms. Anyone can be confident when everything is going well. Anyone can be resilient when nothing is testing them. Anyone can be unstoppable when nothing is trying to stop them. But can you stay grounded when the ground is shaking? Can you stay clear when everything is chaos? Can you keep moving forward when every part of you wants to give up? That's the test. That's where you discover whether the work you've done is real. And here's what you'll find. The tools hold. The neural pathways you built are strong enough. The person you've become can handle this. Not perfectly. Not without pain. Not without moments of doubt and fear and overwhelming grief. But you don't break. You bend. You feel everything. You move through it. You come out the other side, changed but not destroyed. Wounded but not defeated. You prove to yourself that you're actually unstoppable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can stop you from eventually finding your way through. This is what all the practice has been building toward, the ability to face the worst and keep going, to feel the hardest emotions and not be consumed by them, to experience real crisis and emerge with your core intact. The goal was never to avoid hard emotions. It was to move through them with grace, with agency, with the knowledge that you can survive what you thought would destroy you. And you can. You will. The work you've done has prepared you for this. Now prove it. You've proven it. Through practice, through crisis, through the 1,000 small moments where you chose differently. And now you're standing in a different place than where you started. Look back for a moment. Remember who you were at the beginning of this journey. The person paralyzed by overthinking. The person who watched opportunities pass because fear whispered too loudly. The person trapped inside their own potential, unable to break through the invisible barriers their mind had constructed. That person is still you. But also they're not. Because you've been fundamentally rewired, you no longer try to manage your mind like it's an enemy that needs constant supervision. You operate from a fundamentally different relationship with thought itself. You understand now that thoughts are events, not truths, that they arise and pass like weather, that you can observe them, work with them, redirect them, but you don't have to obey them. Doubt still visits. It probably always will. But it doesn't drive anymore. It doesn't make your decisions. It's a passenger in the car, offering commentary from the back seat, but you're the one with your hands on the wheel. Fear still speaks. It still shows up before big moments, before vulnerable conversations, before stepping into the unknown. But it doesn't decide what you do anymore. You've learned to feel fear and move forward anyway, to acknowledge its presence without granting it authority over your actions. This is the shift. This is what transformation actually looks like. You wake up in the morning and there's no dread. Not because your life is perfect or your challenges have disappeared, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever the day brings. There's a baseline of calm that wasn't there before. A quiet confidence that's become your new normal. You make decisions without the paralysis that used to consume you. You still weigh options. You still think things through. But you don't spiral into endless analysis. You don't need perfect certainty before you act. You trust your judgment enough to move forward, even when the path isn't completely clear. Your relationships have deepened because you're no longer performing, no longer hiding the parts of yourself you thought were unacceptable, no longer managing every interaction to avoid rejection. You show up as yourself, messy sometimes, uncertain sometimes, but authentic, and people respond to that authenticity. They feel safer with you because you're not pretending to have it all together. They trust you more because you're real. The conversations go deeper. The connections feel richer. You can be vulnerable without armor. You can disagree without catastrophizing. You can ask for what you need without shame. And when conflict arises, because it always does, you don't immediately assume it means the end of everything. You can sit with discomfort. You can work through difficulty. You can repair what's broken without deciding that broken means unfixable. Your work has changed too. Not necessarily what you do, but how you do it. There's a flow to it now that didn't exist before. You trust your instincts. You take action without needing to research every possible angle first. You contribute your ideas without rehearsing them endlessly in your head. You take on challenges that would have terrified you before, because you know now that capable isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you become through doing. The imposter syndrome still shows up occasionally, but you recognize it now. You can laugh at it even. Oh, hello, old friend. I know you. You're just my fear of being found out. But I'm not hiding anything, so there's nothing to find. And you keep moving. The voice doesn't stop you anymore. Your creativity has expanded in ways you didn't expect, because you've silenced the inner critic enough to hear the muse. The perfectionism that used to stop you from creating anything has loosened its grip. You make things now, imperfect things, things that aren't quite what you envisioned. But you make them anyway, because you've learned that creation requires permission to be bad first. That every master was once a beginner. That the only way to improve is to produce. And in that production, in that consistent practice of making without judgment, you've discovered something beautiful. The process itself is the reward, not the perfect finished product. The act of creating. The flow state. The expression of something that lives inside you. You're more present now. In conversations. In experiences. In moments that used to pass by while your mind was somewhere else. Someone is talking to you, and you're actually listening. Not planning your response. Not monitoring how you're coming across. Just listening. Receiving. Being there. You walk outside and notice the sky, the way light hits buildings, the sound of birds. Small details you used to miss because you were too busy thinking. You eat a meal and taste it. You feel the sun on your skin and register the warmth. You're here, actually here, in your life, instead of perpetually living 3 steps ahead or 3 steps behind. This presence changes everything. It makes ordinary moments extraordinary. It deepens pleasure. It even makes difficult moments more bearable because you are facing them directly instead of fragmenting your attention across past regrets and future fears. Your body feels different too. The chronic tension you carried for years has released. Not completely, not all the time, but enough that you notice the difference. Your shoulders aren't perpetually raised. Your jaw isn't constantly clenched. You breathe deeper. You move more freely. You inhabit your physical form with less resistance. And when stress does create tension, you notice it sooner. You address it before it becomes chronic. You've learned to listen to your body's signals instead of overriding them until you break down. People have started to notice something different about you. They can't always name it, but they feel it. There's a groundedness to you, a steadiness. You don't get rattled as easily. You don't react as intensely to things that would have sent you spiraling before. They see you handle challenges with a calm they didn't expect. They watch you stay centered when things go wrong. They notice that you are willing to be vulnerable, to admit uncertainty, to say, "I don't know," without shame. And that quality, whatever it is they're sensing, it draws people in. Because everyone is looking for someone who seems to have found solid ground in a world that feels increasingly unstable, and you've become that person, not by pretending you have all the answers, but by developing the capacity to remain steady even without them. This is who you are now. This is what unstoppable looks like in real life. Not invincible. You still get hurt. You still fail. You still face setbacks and disappointments, and days where everything feels too hard. Not unbreakable. You still bend under pressure. You still feel overwhelmed sometimes. You still have moments of doubt and fear and grief, but resilient. Deeply, fundamentally resilient. You bounce back. You find your footing again. You recover from blows that would have destroyed the person you used to be. Adaptable. When circumstances change, you change with them. When plans fall apart, you make new plans. When one path closes, you find another. You're not rigid. You're fluid. You move with life instead of fighting against it, and alive. Fully, vibrantly alive. Not just surviving, not just getting through, actually living, engaging, experiencing, creating, connecting, growing. This is what you've built. This is what all the practice created. This is what happens when you consistently choose new patterns until those patterns become your new default. And here's the beautiful part. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. You now have tools you'll carry for the rest of your life. Skills that will deepen with continued practice. Neural pathways that will strengthen every time you use them. You'll face new challenges, different struggles, harder tests, and you'll use these same tools to navigate them. You'll observe, you'll label, you'll redirect, you'll anchor, you'll ground yourself, you'll find the next right action. And each time you do, you'll be reinforcing the identity you've built, proving to yourself again and again that you're someone who can handle difficulty, someone who moves through discomfort, someone who keeps going even when it's hard. The transformation isn't complete. It's never complete. You're not finished becoming. You're just finished believing that who you are right now is who you'll always be. You've learned that you can change, that you can grow, that you can rewire patterns that felt permanent. And that knowledge changes everything about how you approach the future. You don't have to stay small anymore. You don't have to play it safe. You don't have to let fear make your decisions or doubt control your actions. You can take risks. You can be vulnerable. You can try things you're not sure you'll succeed at. Because you know now that failure doesn't define you, that rejection doesn't destroy you, that uncertainty doesn't have to paralyze you. You can step into the arena, whatever arena that is for you. Relationships, career, creativity, leadership, advocacy. Whatever you've been holding back from, you can show up fully. Speak your truth. Claim your space. Contribute your gifts, not because you're perfect or because you have it all figured out, but because you've learned that waiting for perfect certainty is just another form of self-sabotage. And you deserve to be in the arena. You deserve to try. You deserve to fail and learn and try again. You deserve to take up space and use your voice and offer what only you can offer. Carry this forward into every conversation, every decision, every challenge, every opportunity. Remember who you are now, not who you were, not who fear says you are, but who you've actually become through this work. You're someone who feels fear and acts anyway, someone who experiences doubt without letting it drive, someone who faces hard things without breaking, someone who keeps showing up, keeps trying, keeps growing. You're someone who's been fundamentally rewired. Your brain has changed. Your nervous system has changed. Your relationship with your own mind has changed. And because of that, everything else can change too. This is your new beginning. This is the foundation you'll build the rest of your life on. These tools, this understanding, this unshakable knowing that you can handle what comes. You're not trying to become unstoppable anymore. You are unstoppable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can stop you from eventually finding your way through. Not because you never struggle, but because you've learned to move through struggle without being consumed by it. Not because life will be easy from here, but because you've become someone who can handle difficulty. This is who you are. This is what you've built. This is what's possible when you commit to rewiring your mind and refuse to accept limitation as permanent. You've done the work. You've proven it to yourself. Now carry it forward, into the rest of your life, into every challenge, into every opportunity, into every moment where you get to choose who you're going to be. You know who you are now. You're unstoppable.